My cheating husband left me in debt. Now he's begging for a loan. Before we begin the story, make sure to subscribe to our channel and never miss more incredible stories every day. The envelope looked harmless enough. White, thin, unassuming, just another piece of mail in the pile I'd been avoiding for weeks. But the second I tore it open and saw the numbers, my stomach dropped so hard it hurt. Not a payment, a balance. In my name. I remember staring at the statement, my vision blurring, thinking it had to be a mistake. We didn't even have that kind of limit. Then I saw the charges: luxury hotels, designer jewelry, private dining experiences. None of it mine. I waited for him to come home, gripping that paper so tightly my knuckles turned white. When the door finally swung open, his hair was damp, his shirt half-buttoned. He smiled like nothing was wrong. "What's for dinner?" he asked, tossing his keys onto the counter. I slammed the statement down in front of him. "Care to explain this?" He glanced at it for barely 2 seconds before shrugging. "Relax, it's just temporary. I'll handle it." "Temporary?" My voice cracked. "This is in my name. You've been spending like this for months." He sighed, like I was overreacting. "You signed the forms, remember? Joint credit responsibility. You're covered." That's when it hit me. Those routine papers he'd slipped under my nose months ago, telling me they were just for refinancing. He'd made me sign for a card I didn't even know existed. Before I could respond, his phone buzzed on the counter. A name flashed on the screen: Sabrina. I snatched it before he could, unlocking it with the code I knew he thought I'd forgotten. The first message burned into my brain. "Last night was perfect. Can't wait for the trip." Did she buy the work emergency story? My hands shook. "Who is she?" He froze, then had the audacity to smirk. "Don't make this ugly." Ugly? It was already worse than that. My marriage wasn't just over. It had been rotting from the inside for months. And I was the one left holding the bill. But the real punch in the gut? I had no idea that 1 year later, that same man would be standing on my doorstep, begging me for money. It had been a year since the night everything fell apart. A year of clawing my way out of the pit he'd shoved me into, selling my car, working 2 jobs, negotiating with creditors who didn't care about my sob story. I'd rebuilt, piece by piece, learning to live without him and without the trust I'd once had in people. That's why, when I heard the knock at my door that rainy Thursday evening, I didn't expect him. I opened the door and froze. There he was, same crooked smile, but thinner, more haggard, with shadows under his eyes that made him look 10 years older. He wasn't wearing his usual tailored coat, just a wrinkled hoodie and jeans that had seen better days. "Hey," he said, as if we were old friends catching up. I didn't move. "What do you want?" He glanced over his shoulder, like he was checking to see if anyone was watching, then lowered his voice. "I need your help." I almost laughed. "You mean money?" His silence was all the confirmation I needed. I stepped back, ready to slam the door, but he pushed his hand against the frame. "Please, just hear me out." "Why should I?" I hissed. "You cheated on me, drained my accounts, left me drowning in debt, and now you think I'll bail you out." His jaw tightened. "Things didn't work out the way I thought. Sabrina's gone. I'm in trouble." I folded my arms. "Good." For the first time, the arrogance faded from his face. "If I don't get the money, they're going to come after me, and you don't know what these people are capable of." I stared at him, the rain soaking into the porch between us. Part of me wanted to shut the door and never look back. But another part, the one that remembered every sleepless night and every humiliating phone call from debt collectors, wanted answers. I stepped aside just enough for him to enter. "Fine, tell me everything. But if I don't like what I hear, you're out." He walked in, dripping water onto my floor. And with the first words out of his mouth, I realized this wasn't just about unpaid bills. It was about something much darker. He stood in my living room, shifting from foot to foot like a child caught stealing. I stayed by the door, arms crossed, making it clear this wasn't a social visit. "It started after you left," he began. "I thought I could fix things, but the people I borrowed from, they're not exactly banks." I let out a bitter laugh. "What? You ran out of credit cards in my name?" His eyes flicked up at me, wounded, but I didn't care. It was supposed to be quick, just enough to get me through until a big investment came through. "An investment?" I repeated flatly. "With who? Sabrina?" His jaw tightened. "She introduced me to them." It all clicked. The expensive trips, the sudden influx of money before our split. Sabrina wasn't just a fling. She'd been a link to whatever mess he was in now. They said I'd double my money in a month, he went on. But the deal went south. Now I owe them a lot. And they don't take. I'm broke for an answer. How much? I asked, even though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. He hesitated. Enough that they've started sending reminders. The way he said reminders made my stomach knot. What kind of reminders? He pulled a crumpled envelope from his pocket and tossed it on my coffee table. Inside was a single photo, him, standing in front of his apartment building. In the corner of the frame, barely visible, was a figure in a black hoodie watching him. They know where I live, he said quietly. They know where I go. And if I don't pay them by next week, he didn't finish the sentence. I stared at him, my anger warring with something I didn't want to admit, fear. If these people were dangerous, getting involved could pull me right back into chaos. But as I looked at that photo, one thing became clear, whether I helped him or not, his mess might already be heading my way. I didn't touch the envelope again. It sat there on the coffee table like something toxic, poisoning the air between us. So, I said slowly, you're here because you think I'll just hand over the money and make this go away. He shook his head. Not hand it over. Loan it. I'll pay you back. I swear. I laughed, sharp, humorless. You swore a lot of things. Fidelity. Honesty. That we'd be partners. And look how that turned out. His voice dropped. This is different. If I don't pay them, they won't just ruin me. They'll hurt me. And maybe you too. That last part made my skin crawl. Is that a threat? No, he said quickly. It's a warning. They know about you. They know you were my wife. They think you might still have money or connections. I felt the blood drain from my face. And whose fault is that? He didn't answer. Instead, he leaned forward, desperate now. You have savings, right? You've rebuilt since we split. I just need enough to buy time. I almost told him to get out. Almost. But then he said something that stopped me cold. There's another way. If you can't give me the money, maybe you can help me get it from someone else. I narrowed my eyes. What does that mean? He glanced toward the window, like he was afraid someone might be listening. There's a man who owes me. Owes us. From back when we were together. If we get him to pay up, we can both walk away from this. I hated that a small part of me was curious. And why? I asked. Would he owe me anything? His gaze locked on mine, steady and unblinking. Because he doesn't know you know the truth about him. Yet. I didn't like the way he said it. Calm, deliberate, like he was dangling bait. Who? I asked. He hesitated just long enough to make me suspicious. Daniel Pierce. The name hit me like a stone. Daniel had been a friend of ours. Well, more his friend than mine. A flashy real estate guy who always seemed to have too much cash and too little conscience. I hadn't seen him since before the divorce. What does Daniel have to do with this? I asked. My ex leaned back in the chair, looking almost pleased to have my attention. Back when we were still married, I fronted him money for a deal. A lot of money. He promised me a cut of the profits, but then he ghosted me. I frowned. So go after him yourself. I tried. He laughed in my face. Said I couldn't prove a thing. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. But you can. I folded my arms. And why is that? Because, he said slowly, the money I gave him came from your account. Without your consent. That makes you the real creditor, legally speaking. If you show up with proof, he won't risk you going to the police. He'll pay fast. I felt a wave of nausea. So you stole from me to bankroll one of your shady friends, and now you want me to help you get it back? He didn't flinch. It's the fastest way out. And you'd get your cut. More than enough to cover what I owe these people. I hated that he was making it sound so clean. Like this was just business. But there was nothing clean about any of it. What if I say no? I asked. He met my gaze, his expression darkening. Then Daniel wins. And I don't think either of us wants to find out what happens after that. Something in his tone made my skin prickle. He wasn't just scared of the people he owed. He was scared of Daniel, too. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, the past came flooding back. Daniel's smug grin across my dinner table, his too long stares when my ex wasn't looking. The way he always called me smart girl, like it was both a compliment and a taunt. By morning, my ex was still on my couch, sipping coffee like he belonged there. I hated the sight of him in my kitchen, hated that I was even considering hearing him out. You're not going to let this go, are you? I asked. He shook his head. You're the only one who can make him pay. And if I do this, I said slowly, what happens after? You vanish? Or do these people you owe still come knocking on my door? I'll handle them, he said quickly. Too quickly. I grabbed my bag and keys. Fine. Let's see what Daniel has to say. But if I get even a hint that you're lying to me again, I walk. He smirked, like he'd already won. You won't regret this. The drive to Daniel's office was a trip back into everything I'd tried to leave behind. Sleek glass building, expensive cars out front, the faint smell of cologne and money in the lobby. The receptionist's smile faltered when she saw my ex, but she waved us through. Daniel's office was bigger than our old living room. He stood when we entered, that same self-satisfied smirk plastered across his face. Well, to what do I owe the pleasure? He asked, eyes flicking between us. I didn't bother with pleasantries. You owe me money, Daniel. A lot of it. And I have proof. For a moment, the smirk twitched. Then he laughed. You mean the money he gave me? I don't owe you a thing. I slid a folder onto his desk. You do if it came from my account without my consent. Which it did. His smile vanished entirely. He glanced at my ex, who shifted uncomfortably. You brought her into this. Daniel said. She's the only one who can make it right. My ex replied. Daniel's gaze returned to me, colder now. You have no idea what you're walking into. Daniel's voice had lost its fake warmth. It was sharper now, each word deliberate. You think this is about a simple debt? He asked, leaning back in his chair. That money was an investment. And the people tied to it don't like questions. I kept my tone steady. Then they can take it up with the police. I have the records, the withdrawal slips, and the transfer logs. You either pay me what you owe, or I file a report today. A tense silence filled the room. My ex shifted beside me, like he was caught between wanting to back me up and wanting to bolt. Finally, Daniel smiled again, but it didn't reach his eyes. You've got a spine. I'll give you that. But filing a report won't just make trouble for me. It'll put you right in their line of sight. I'm already there, I said. Daniel chuckled softly, then leaned forward, resting his elbows on the desk. If I were you, I'd burn that evidence and forget my name. In fact, he reached into a drawer and pulled out a thick envelope, setting it in front of me. Here's something to help you forget. I didn't touch it. Is this supposed to be a payoff? It's supposed to be me being generous, he said. Take it, walk away, and I'll make sure no one bothers you. I glanced at my ex. His eyes told me he wanted me to grab it, desperately. But something in Daniel's tone made my stomach knot. This wasn't generosity. This was a warning. I stood up. I'm not here to be bought off. I want the full amount, and I want it in writing. Daniel's smirk vanished again. Careful, he said, his voice low. You're starting to sound like someone who doesn't care about staying alive. That's when I realized Daniel wasn't bluffing. And whatever this money was tied to, it was bigger and uglier than I'd imagined. I walked out of Daniel's office with my pulse thundering in my ears, my ex trailing behind me like a shadow. The glass doors shut behind us, sealing in that suffocating mix of expensive cologne and thinly veiled threats. The elevator ride down was silent until my ex finally spoke. You shouldn't have pushed him like that. I turned to him, incredulous. You dragged me into this. You said he owed me money. Now I find out it's tied to something dangerous, and I'm the one who shouldn't push? He rubbed the back of his neck. You don't know these people, what they're capable of. No, I snapped, but I'm starting to get a very clear picture. And I'm not letting you use me as your shield. When we reached the parking lot, the late afternoon sun felt too bright, too sharp. I was still replaying Daniel's smirk in my head when I noticed a black SUV parked 2 rows over. The same model I'd seen outside my building last week. I slowed. Do you know that car? My ex glanced over, then quickly looked away. Don't stare. That's not an answer. They're just making sure we don't do anything stupid, he muttered. My stomach twisted. They? So they're watching us now? He didn't respond, which was all the answer I needed. We got into my car, and before I could start the engine, he said, Look, maybe we take Daniel's offer. It's not the full amount, but... I cut him off. No. If I take hush money, they own me. I'm not spending the rest of my life looking over my shoulder. He stared at me, something like fear in his eyes. Then you'd better be ready for what happens next. Because once you draw a line in the sand with people like this, they make it their mission to cross it. And as we pulled out of the lot, the SUV followed. The SUV trailed us like a predator, keeping just out of striking range. No sudden moves, no honking, no attempt to hide. Just steady, deliberate pursuit. I kept my eyes on the rearview mirror. How long have they been following you? My ex shifted uncomfortably. A while. How long is a while? I pressed. He hesitated. Couple of weeks. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. So you came to my door knowing they were watching you? Watching me now? He winced. I didn't have anywhere else to go. My knuckles went white. You had plenty of places to go. You just picked the one person dumb enough to ever believe you again. The SUV stayed with us through 3 turns and a stretch of highway. When I took an unexpected exit toward a crowded shopping center, they followed. My heartbeat pounded in my ears. This is your mess, I said. But if they think they can scare me, they can do more than scare you. He cut in, his voice low. They want Daniel's money. If they think you're standing in the way, they'll make an example of you. I pulled into the parking lot of a busy cafe, killed the engine, and turned to face him. Then we don't just stand in the way. We take them down. He blinked like I'd just suggested jumping off a bridge. That's suicide. Not if we're smart, I said. Daniel's hiding something. He was too rattled when I showed him the proof. If we find out what it is, we'll have leverage over him, and maybe over whoever's breathing down your neck. For a moment, he just stared at me, torn between disbelief and hope. And how exactly do you plan on doing that? I looked out the window, where the SUV sat idling across the lot. We let them think we're playing along. And while they're watching us, we watch Daniel. His mouth opened to protest, but before he could speak, my phone buzzed with a new message from an unknown number. It read, "Walk away now, or your next debt will be in blood." The words on my phone screen seemed to pulse, as if each one carried its own heartbeat. My ex leaned over to read, and I felt him stiffen beside me. They don't bluff, he said quietly. I locked the phone and slipped it into my bag. Good. Then they mean it. Which means they're scared. He stared at me like I'd lost my mind. That's not fear. That's a death sentence. But I wasn't backing down. Not after everything he'd done. Not after Daniel's smug grin. And definitely not after someone threatened me like I was just another pawn to be removed from the board. I drove us back to my place, the SUV shadowing us the entire way. When I pulled into my driveway, it didn't stop. It rolled past slowly, the tinted windows hiding whoever was inside. Inside, I went straight to the kitchen table, spreading out the copies I'd made of the bank statements and withdrawal slips. My ex watched me, restless, pacing like a caged animal. This isn't just about Daniel owing you, I said. These transactions, there's a pattern. The same 3 accounts show up over and over. He stepped closer, frowning. Those aren't Daniel's accounts. No, I said, tapping the page. They belong to a holding company in Nevada. One that doesn't seem to exist on paper, except for these transfers. His face paled. That's them. That's who I owe. So Daniel's not just your debtor. He's their middleman, I said slowly. Which means if we can prove he's skimming, they'll turn on him instead of us. He shook his head. You don't know how dangerous that is. Dangerous, I said, meeting his eyes, is letting them keep all the power. Before he could argue, there was another knock at the door, loud, deliberate. We froze. Whoever was outside didn't bother to call out. And then the knocking stopped, replaced by the sound of footsteps circling the house. The footsteps were slow, measured, like the person outside was mapping every inch of my home. I glanced at my ex. His face had gone pale, his eyes darting toward the back door. Don't, I whispered. If you run, you'll just tell them we're scared. We both froze when the steps reached the kitchen window. A shadow passed across the blinds, pausing for just a second too long, before moving on toward the side of the house. I grabbed my phone, ready to call the police, but my ex shook his head sharply. If it's them, the cops won't help. They'll just vanish before anyone shows up, and come back later when it's worse. My stomach tightened. So what? We just let them play cat and mouse until they get bored. He didn't answer. The footsteps stopped. Silence settled in, heavy and suffocating. Then came the sound of something sliding under the front door, a plain white envelope. I picked it up with shaking hands, half expecting it to be empty. Instead, inside was a single photograph. Me, standing in the cafe parking lot yesterday, talking to my ex. The angle was close enough that I could see the tension in my jaw, the way my hand gripped my car keys like a weapon. On the back, in messy block letters, was one word: tomorrow. They're giving us a deadline, my ex muttered, running a hand through his hair. For what? I demanded. For whatever they think we can deliver, he said grimly. Money. Daniel. Information. And if we don't? I set the photo down on the table, forcing myself to think past the fear. Then we make tomorrow ours, not theirs. We go to Daniel before they do. His eyes widened. You want to provoke them? No, I said. I want to beat them to the punch. But as I spoke, a terrible thought hit me. If they were already this close, maybe Daniel wasn't the only one being watched. I barely slept. The image on that photograph burned into my mind. By morning, my plan was simple. Find Daniel, get him to talk, and use whatever he said as leverage before the people in the SUV decided to make tomorrow mean something final. My ex sat at the kitchen table nursing coffee, eyes bloodshot. If we go to him now, he'll know we're desperate, he said. Good, I replied, shoving the bank statement copies into my bag. Desperate people take risks. And if Daniel's the middleman for whoever's breathing down your neck, that means he's vulnerable, too. We drove separately to avoid looking like a united front. I parked a block away from Daniel's office and spotted him leaving the building, dressed sharp as ever, but moving fast, checking his phone every few steps. I followed him on foot, staying half a block behind. My ex appeared from the other end of the street, cutting Daniel off as he approached his car. Morning, Daniel, my ex said, leaning casually against the driver's door. Daniel froze. I told you. I stepped forward, holding up my phone. We both know tomorrow isn't about us. It's about them. And if they think you're skimming off the top. His eyes narrowed. You have no idea what you're talking about. I hit play on a short clip I'd prepared, audio from our last meeting, where he'd hinted the money was tied to dangerous people. Want me to send this to their accounts department? I asked. For the first time, Daniel's composure cracked. He glanced around, lowering his voice. You're playing with fire. Then give me something to put it out, I said. He looked at my ex, then back at me. Fine. Meet me tonight. Alone. 9 o'clock. And you'd better pray no one follows you. He slid into his car and drove off without another word. I turned to my ex, this could be it. But his expression wasn't hopeful, it was terrified. You don't get it, he said. If Daniel's calling that meeting, it's not because he's scared. It's because he's setting us up. By the time 9 o'clock rolled around, my nerves were raw. I kept replaying my ex's warning. It's a setup, but the need for answers outweighed my fear. If Daniel really was the link between us and the people in the SUV, this might be my only chance to get leverage. He'd told me to come alone, so I did, or at least, that's what I let him think. My ex was parked 3 blocks away, engine running, phone in hand in case things went sideways. The meeting spot was an abandoned warehouse at the edge of the industrial district. The streetlights nearby were dead, and the only illumination came from the pale spill of moonlight through broken windows. When I stepped inside, Daniel was already there, leaning against a rusted metal column, smoking. Right on time, he said, flicking ash onto the cracked concrete floor. I didn't waste time. I want everything. Names, accounts, transactions. Enough to make them forget we exist. Daniel smirked. And in exchange? You get to keep breathing, I said flatly. He chuckled, shaking his head. You've got guts. Shame it won't save you. Before I could react, I heard footsteps behind me. I turned and saw 2 men in dark jackets stepping out of the shadows, their faces unreadable. One of them carried a heavy metal case. Daniel's smirk widened. They're here for the delivery. And you? You're the payment. The taller man stepped forward, reaching for my arm. Instinct took over. I stumbled back, pulling the pepper spray from my coat pocket and aiming it at his face. He cursed, recoiling, and I bolted for the exit. Behind me, Daniel shouted something, and the sound of pounding footsteps echoed off the walls. I burst through the door into the night, and straight into the headlights of a car that screeched to a stop inches from me. My ex was behind the wheel, door open. Get in, he shouted. I dove inside, and before I could slam the door shut, I saw Daniel emerge from the warehouse, yelling into his phone. Whatever just happened, I'd crossed a line tonight, one I couldn't go back from. My ex floored it the second my door slammed shut. Tires screeched against the cracked asphalt, and the old sedan fishtailed before catching traction. Behind us, the warehouse doors burst open and the black SUV roared to life. Seatbelt, he barked, his eyes locked on the rearview mirror. I yanked it across my chest just as the first headlights flared in behind us, closing the gap fast. My heartbeat matched the rhythm of the engine. Fast, uneven, desperate. They're gaining, I said. I see them. he muttered, wrenching the wheel to take a hard right into a narrow service road. The SUV followed, its bulk eating the corners like it owned the road. We tore through the industrial district, the world outside a blur of chain-link fences and flickering security lights. Every turn we made, they matched, never losing distance, never falling back. "What did you get?" my ex shouted over the roar of the engine. "From Daniel, anything useful?" I gripped my bag. "Nothing. Just confirmation that he's feeding them, and that we're next on the menu." His jaw tightened. "Then we need to make them choke on it." Up ahead, the road split, one path back toward the city, the other toward the docks. Without hesitation, he took the turn toward the docks, the air growing damp and salty. "They won't risk a scene near the shipping yards," he said. "Too many cameras." I wanted to believe him, but the SUV didn't slow. The maze of containers loomed around us, rusted steel walls that turned every sound into an echo. We hit a dead end. "Out," he ordered. "What? Out?" We ditched the car, lose them on foot. The SUV skidded to a stop behind us. Doors slammed. Heavy footsteps closed in. We ran, weaving between stacks of containers. My breath burned in my lungs, my shoes slipping on the damp ground. Then I heard it, the unmistakable click of a gun being cocked. "Don't move," a voice growled from the shadows. We froze. The voice was deep, calm, the kind that didn't need to shout to make itself obeyed. From between two containers, a man stepped into the pale light of a nearby lamp. His face was hidden beneath a baseball cap, but the pistol in his hand was plain as day. "Hands where I can see them," he ordered. My ex slowly raised his arms. I did the same, my pulse hammering in my ears. Footsteps echoed behind us. Two more men emerged, flanking the one with the gun. "You've been making a lot of noise," the first man said. "Daniel's not happy." I forced my voice steady. "Then maybe Daniel should worry about what I have on him." That earned me a tilt of the head. "What you have?" My ex shot me a warning look, but I ignored it. "Proof. Bank transfers. Ties between him and the people he's skimming from. Enough to make your bosses think twice about trusting him." For the first time, the gunman hesitated. His eyes flicked to the men beside him, then back to me. "You're saying Daniel's been holding back?" "I'm saying he's been playing both sides," I said. "And if something happens to me, that proof gets sent to every account he's touched." Silence stretched, thick and heavy. Then the gun lowered slightly. "You have 24 hours. Bring us what you've got, or we stop playing nice." The three of them melted back into the shadows as quickly as they'd appeared, the sound of the SUV's engine fading into the distance. I finally let out the breath I'd been holding. My ex turned to me, eyes wide. "You just lied to people who kill for a living." I met his stare. "No, I just bought us time. Now we have to make the lie true." Somewhere out there, Daniel was still confident he had control. He didn't know yet that in 24 hours, I planned to take every bit of leverage he had and use it to burn his world to the ground.